So, welcome back to another episode. Today we continue as promised in the last episode because we didn't make it through the whole text, through the whole article because it took too long. It was like over an hour, or I think 1.25 of an hour or something. And today we continue with the section Nikolaus als Geschenkebringer, which is quite fitting because in about 4 days Christmas is coming up, at least in Germany. In other countries, it's of course on the 25th or the morning of the 25th because, of course, the Santa Claus brings the presents during the night or something in, I think, most of the countries except for Germany. But yeah, in Germany, it's coming up on the 24th, like in, what's it called? Not in the night, in the evening, I think. I don't necessarily know what the kind of standard for it is, but I guess it mostly is in the evening. But yeah, we're going to continue with this section, Nikolaus als Geschenkebringer. And I think we're just going to dive right in. Leave a like, leave a comment if you want to, subscribe, and let's start. So, Nikolaus als Geschenkebringer. Of course, I always have to say that at the beginning of the video. I'm always going to translate that like word by word. So, Nikolaus als Geschenkebringer. Nikolaus as Geschenke means presents. Bringer, you could say bringer. Like, it basically means to bring something, to take with you. Yeah, bring basically. So, Nikolaus als Geschenkebringer means Nikolaus as presents bringer. So, word by word, and then in context, which of course means Nikolaus as the, what's it called, bringer of the presents. I'm just gonna translate it in Google. Bringer, of course, with a capital B because it's a noun. So yeah, it's the same in English. And yeah, that was for this basically in context, just as an example. But what I was just wanting to say is that I'm just going to translate it word by word, then in terms of the structure, and then in context, so not word by word, but so that it makes sense as a sentence in English. So, first sentence. Infolge der Ablehnung der Heiligenverehrung durch die Reformation wurde die ursprüngliche Bescherung am Nikolaustag in vielen Ländern auf Weihnachten verlegt, da evangelische Theologen die Nikolausbescherung als Ausdruck einer Nikolausverehrung ansahen. I'm just gonna read it all for once, so. Infolgedessen wurde Nikolaus als Gabenbringer vielerorts vom heiligen Christ, Martin Luther, um 1535 oder vom Christkind abgelöst. Durch dieses wechselseitige Verhältnis hat sich im 19. Jahrhundert das US-amerikanische Brauchtum um den Weihnachtsmann, Santa Claus, entwickelt, die heute weltweit dominierende, merkantil bestimmte Rezeption des heiligen Nikolaus. In Verbindung mit winterlichem Brauchtum aus verschiedenen Kulturkreisen entwickelte sich zudem die synkretistische, säkulare Symbolfigur des Weihnachtsmannes. Schiffchen setzen nennt man den seit dem 15. Jahrhundert bekannten Brauch, aus Papier oder anderem Material Nikolausschiffe zu basteln, in die der Heilige seine Gaben legen soll. Hintergrund für diesen Brauch dürfte das Schifferpatronat sein. Auch heute noch befindet sich auf vielen Handelsschiffen ein Bildnis des heiligen Nikolaus. Das Nikolausschiffchen wurde später durch Stiefel, Schuh oder Strumpf abgelöst, zu denen später noch der Gabenteller kam. Im Salzburger Land gab es dafür den Nikolausgarten. Kinder stellen am Vorabend des Nikolaustages Schuhe, Stiefel oder Teller vor die Tür oder hängen Strümpfe vor den Kamin, damit der Heilige sie auf seinem Weg durch die Nacht mit Nüssen, Mandarinen, Schokolade, Lebkuchen und so weiter füllen kann. Außerdem gibt es morgens oft ein aus Hefeteig gebackenes Gebetbrot. Der Einlegebrauch, das Füllen der Schuhe in der Nacht vom 5. auf den 6. Dezember oder ähnliches, basiert auf der Legende von 3 Jungfrauen, die nachts vom heiligen Nikolaus beschenkt wurden. In mittelalterlichen Klosterschulen gab es den Brauch, dass die Kinder sich am Nikolaustag einen Kinderbischof aus ihren Reihen wählen durften. Nach dem Prinzip der verkehrten Welt predigte er den Erwachsenen und durfte ihr Verhalten tadeln. An einigen Orten blieb er bis zum 28. Dezember, dem Tag der unschuldigen Kinder, im Amt. So. Nikolaus als Geschenkebringer. We already translated that. Infolge der Ablehnung der Heiligenverehrung durch die Reformation wurde die ursprüngliche Bescherung am Nikolaustag in vielen Ländern auf Weihnachten verlegt, da evangelische Theologen die Nikolausbescherung als Ausdruck einer Nikolausverehrung ansahen. Infolge, basically it just means in serious or something. There's also the expression in Folge, which basically means in serious. But in this case, in Folge means as a consequence of. So you could also say in consequence, but yeah, as a consequence of. Der means of, yeah, so as a consequence, der, of, the, basically, in this case, because this is a, what's it called? In German it's called bestimmte Artikel, if I'm not mistaken, so specific, as opposed to ein, in this case eine Ablehnung, which is a non-specific article, I guess. Anyways, infolge, as a consequence of der Ablehnung, which derives from the word lehnen, which just means to lean, and ablehnen means to basically lean away, so to, in this case, it means to refuse, to, is there another translation? Let me just, lehnen, reject, this is what I was looking for, to refuse or to reject, rather, in this case. So as a consequence of the rejection, infolge der Ablehnung der, the, of the, Heiligenverehrung, derives from the word der Heilige, sorry, with the non-capital E here, so der Heilige means the holy, so derives of course from the word heilig, heilig, which means holy. You could also kind of, what's it called, analyze that further and say it comes from the word heil, which means either unheard or, I don't know, but we're just gonna leave it at that. So Heiligenverehrung, Heiligen is basically of the holy. Verehrung derives from the word Ehre, which means honor. Yeah, basically, yeah, honor. You could also say kind of, yeah, legacies. Not the right translation, but rather honor. And Verehrung means to, you could say to honor someone, but in this case, it rather means to, yeah, rather worship someone, you could say. Verehren. Worship, yeah, this is correct. So, as a consequence of the, refusal, rejection of the worshipping of the holy or something, durch die Reformation, durch in general means through. You could also say through in English in this case, I guess, but it just means because of or something, like, yeah, as a consequence of, through, we're just gonna leave out through. Die Reformation, the Reformation, I guess is the same in English, wurde, this is probably, wurde verlegt, so it was being verlegt. This derives from the word legen, which means to lay or to place. So wurde verlegt was being deplaced, because this is the passive form, passive past form. Wurde verlegt was being placed somewhere else. Ver is basically one thing. Ver as the prefix of something. Verlassen, verhalten, vereinbaren, verlegen, vergessen. In a lot of cases, it's just to kind of, which way do I say this? To make something kind of messy, or to denormalize some situation, you could say. And verlegt is, for example, a very good example because it means to deplace something. So, yeah. Wurde verlegt. Die ursprüngliche, of course, the ursprüngliche derives from the word Ursprung, which means the origin. You could also further analyze that and say it derives from the word springen, because this, when it's kind of, what's it called? Not declined. There is another word, I don't know. Conjugated, I don't know. Like the past, the second past form, the perfect form basically means gesprungen. So this is very, I think, similar, but is not very relevant in here. It just means ursprünglich means the original. Bescherung means, what's it called? The like gifts, or giving, receiving, like the time when you open the presents at Christmas. Bescherung. Gift giving, interesting. Translated the same way. So Bescherung, gift giving, was being deplaced the gift giving, or was the gift giving, the original gift giving am Nikolaustag, at the day of Nikolaus. Tag means day. Tag. Nikolaus is of course the Nikolaus von Myra, Nikolaus of Myra or something in English. I think you would pronounce that this way or something. In vielen Ländern, it's the same in English. In vielen, many, in this case it's, I think, what's it called, dative case, in wem, in vielen Ländern. But I think, is it an accusative, in vielen? No, this is, I know, not in this case, but I'm just thinking vielen Leuten. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. What I was trying to say, accusative would probably be the same. Like, for example, ich gebe vielen Leuten etwas. No, this would also be dative. Ich, well, how can I don't, this is probably not very relevant for most of the people here, but I'm just trying to find an example, kind of blanking on one. Because accusative, vielen, viele, I think, or maybe accusative is probably, no, accusative is viele. So, for example, ich gebe viele Bücher, because I am the subject. This is subjective or nominative or something, or nominative, I don't know, whichever way you want to call it. In German it's called nominativ. Viele Bücher, this is the, what's it called, accusative. So this is like who, in German it's called wen, so who I am doing that with, kind of. And wem is, for example, in this sentence, meinem Freund. And this is, ich. And this is the dative, wem, meinem Freund. Or, for example, if I want to kind of even advance that, not here. Meinem Freund, einem Freund. This would also be dative case. Einem Freund, eines Freundes. I mean, this would kind of be stacked on top of each other, but eines Freundes. And this is the genitive case because whose. This is whom or who I'm doing this to. This is what or who I'm doing this with. And this is who is doing that. So these are the 4 cases in German as a short example, but yeah, let's just move on. In vielen Ländern, anyways, in vielen Ländern, in wem, so dative case, in a lot of, viele means a lot of, viel, derives from that, nominative case, much, a lot of. Ländern. Länder is the plural form of Land. Länder derives from, Land. So, yeah. And auf Weihnachten, auf means in this case on top or on. Weihnachten means Christmas. You could also, what's it called? In German you say, I'm trying to find a different word because I always say dissect. Zerlegen. Disassemble. Yeah, disassemble you could also say. Break down that word into Weih, which may derive from the word weihen, which is kind of a consecrate. I think when you kind of make something sacred or holy, I think that means that. There's also the word in German Weihwasser. I mean, it's kind of funny how far I'm always going with these words. Holy water, this is what I'm just trying to display here. And Nachten, of course, derives from the word Nacht, which means night, so the holy night you could say, which is, by the way, I think also a very common way of pronouncing, like expressing Christmas in English, I think, or something. In German, not so much with Heilige Nacht, but you could also say that. By the way, Weihnachten the 24th, because this is, as I already explained in the beginning, the main Christmas, time, is in German called Heiligabend, which is kind of funny because here we are Christmas Eve, or Heiligabend from holy, from Weihwasser, from Weihnachten. But yeah, it's kind of the same, so yeah. Verlegt, here we are referring back to the wurde verlegt, was being deplaced or replaced, I don't know. Da in general means there, but in this case it means as or because of. Evangelical Theologen, theologists, the Nikolaus-Bescherung, which we had here, was the gift-giving Nikolaus, so by the Nikolaus. Als Ausdruck, it can either mean a phrase, which it means not necessarily, not here, but in most cases it will mean phrase or saying or something, which in German you can also say Phrase, but in this case Ausdruck is the more German word. Let me just show you if there are already pre-translated. Yeah, it can either mean an expression, or in this case it can also mean a printout, which is referring to documents like paper, when you print something out. Ausdruck, because this derives from the word drucken, to print. But the word Ausdruck as an expression rather derives from the word drücken, or ausdrücken, sich ausdrücken, which means to express oneself. Kind of funny because express, X is, I think, Latin for get something outside, aus in German, drücken, and press is basically, drücken is press in German. So, very alike. And what was also we wanted to say? Ausdruck, this is, in this case, this is neither one of the, it's rather a, what's it called? You rather say not an example, but a practiced example of something, you could say. Als Ausdruck einer Nikolaus-Verehrung, as an, which way do I translate this? Als Ausdruck einer Nikolaus-Verehrung. Yeah, you could, yes, it's right. In English you can also say as an expression of something. So, just see other as an expression of a Nikolaus gift giving, so of the 6th, where this was what we discussed last episode, where they got the presents on the 6th morning in the stockings, what's it called? Stockings, I think. Stockings, if I'm not mistaken, because in German it's Socken or socks in general, and I'm always kind of confused with the T. So, infolge der Ablehnung der heiligen Verehrung, we didn't do ansahen, which derives from the word sehen, which means to see. Ansehen, in this case, which means basically to take a look at it, like kind of look at it from the side, it's not just the pure seeing, it's from the outside, someone else looks at it like specifically. And the whole sentence, infolge, as a consequence of the rejection of the worshipping of the holy through the Reformation, was the original gift giving at the Nikolaus Day in many countries onto Christmas laid, or being laid, you could say, or in this case was being and here laid or deplaced. As evangelical theologists, the Nikolaus gift giving as expression of a Nikolaus worshipping soul, kind of. So, as a consequence of the rejection of the holy, worshipping of the holy through the Reformation, the original gift giving on the Nikolaus Day was being replaced or deplaced onto the Christmas Day. As evangelical theologists, saw the Nikolaus gift giving as an expression of the Nikolaus worshipping. Next sentence. Infolgedessen, we're here again, we have the infolge, but I'm just going to read the entire sentence. Infolgedessen wurde Nikolaus als Gabenbringer vielerorts vom heiligen Christ, Martin Luther 1535, oder vom Christkind abgelöst. Infolgedessen, which is again, as I was saying, this, so as a consequence of dessen, this is the genitive case of basically das. So dessen is of the, infolge of the, as a consequence of this, you could say, or of that. Wurde, again, was being, Nikolaus, as Gabenbringer, derives from the word Gabe. Gabe, by the way, is fork. Gabe is something, a gift you bring someone, basically, more in terms of religious gift bringing, I guess. Gabenbringer means the gift bringer. Vielerorts, which derives from the word viele, which means many, as we discussed earlier. And orts derives from the word ort, which means, of course, place or location. And orts means basically of a place. But it's also, I think, because of the the kind of, I would say, evolution of the words, where it's kind of normalized that something is said some sort of way, even though it would not necessarily be conjugated, like would be grammatically correct if you were to put it into the structure of the language, but I'm not quite sure. I think this is still correct, but I don't know. Vom, of the, heiligen Christ. Heilig, we discussed earlier, means holy. By the way, this is, I'm remembering again what I was trying to say. Heilig may also come from the words with heil, which I said, but no, this is the English word heil, which heilig, I think, can also in this case mean to bring salvation, well-being, good, whatever you want to translate that as, or holy, or holiness in this case, or rather unher, to bring. I mean, this is maybe not the right translation to translate it as one word, but rather to, I don't know. You can't necessarily probably translate that very much word by word into English, but what I just wanted to say is that heilig rather means someone that is bringing holiness or bringing salvation or rather healing upon someone or upon the people. And that is just also what I was kind of blanking on the word or blanking what I was trying to say, because remembering again that heil, unheard is maybe an alright translation, but I remember the translation, it was rather, healing, to bring basically healing upon someone. So salvation is kind of alright of a translation, at least in this case, but this is what I was trying to say. Someone that brings healing or holiness, can be either one of them, upon, I guess, the people or something. So Heiligen Christ, I mean, in this case it just means Holy Christ, but in general, if you want to kind of go back to the roots of the word, I can either relate back to the words healing or holiness, or like healing, salvation. I think you get what I mean. So let's move on. Martin Luther is of course Martin Luther. What I always find fascinating is that there's the Martin Luther King and there's the Martin Luther who lived in 15 somewhere, and I always used to confuse them. But yeah, he lived in 1535. Oder vom Christkind, or of the Christkind, which means Christ child, which, apparently, as Wikipedia is saying, ist eine Symbolfigur des Weihnachtsfestes, is a symbol figure of the Christmas fest, you could say, or celebration, which is kind of, I think, one of the, I don't know how many, characters there are, but there are at least Santa Claus, in German Christkind, and I don't know, maybe, I think, by the way, Christkind may derive from just Jesus as himself, because he was born on that day, but I'm not quite sure. But the people or characters who bring the presents on Christmas Day. So, abgelöst oder vom Christkind abgelöst, or of the Christ child abgelöst, or from the word lösen, which means to solve or to, lösen, solve is more in terms of problem, but rather in this case at least, it's more in terms of, for example, glue, when you make something, release, untie, it's kind of the same, but it's not necessarily the same. I don't know if there's the word unglue in English, but I think you get what I'm meaning when I'm saying that, because ablösen is rather, I mean, it doesn't matter too much where this lösen comes from, because it's always to loosen, basically, something. I think that's actually rather the word where this is coming from, because English is, of course, a Anglo-Saxony something language, so it derives from German, but this derives from the word, gelöst. No, this is because it's past form. So ablösen, which means to, ab means in most cases get something off. For example, ablösen means replace in English, but it basically means to get something off. But in this case, this is more, more figurative, so it just means to, replace. And what I was trying to say is ab as a prefix in most cases just means that you get something, away off. Like, for example, abholen is maybe not such a good example, because this just means to pick up or get something. But, for example, abschneiden, which means to cut off, basically. Schneiden is also a word on its own, of course, but abschneiden means, of course, to cut something specifically off. Absetzen, you could maybe also say, is, for example, to drop someone off. Or ablassen, like to, for example, to drain or to let off. Abgehen is like, for example, when something, departing, comes off. For example, mein Knopf geht ab. My, what's it called? Button is coming off, is going off. That would maybe be too literally translated, but it's, departing from my clothing, you could say. And just for exemplary purposes. So, infolgedessen, as a consequence of this, exactly this, so of this what was said before there, was being Nikolaus, als Gabenbringer, Giftbringer vielerorts in many places, of the Heiligen Christ, Holy Christ, Martin Luther 1535, Martin Luther, by the way, means around, so he lived, not just lived there, but said it around there. I don't actually know what this means, like content-wise. I think he maybe have created that or said something about that. Oder vom Christkind abgelöst, or of the Christ child, what's it called? Being replaced, or just simply replaced. So, as a consequence of this, Nikolaus, as the gift bringer, was being replaced in many places by the Holy Christ, said by Martin Luther apparently or something, or by the Christ child. I don't know how to translate that. Let me just... Christkind. Christ child, that was actually correct. Interesting. So, durch dieses wechselseitige Verhältnis hat sich im 19. Jahrhundert das US-amerikanische Brauchtum um den Weihnachtsmann Santa Claus entwickelt, die heute weltweit dominierende merkantil bestimmte Rezeption des heiligen Nikolaus. So, through, or because of dieses means this, wechsel, this, wechselseitige, which means, that's kind of more difficult to explain. Wechsel means to, switch, to change. Seitig derives from the word Seite, which means side or page. So seitig means page, side, I don't know how to, how to adjectify that, basically. So, change sidely, but this is of course not correct, just to have it as word by word. Reciprocal, interesting. So, through this, or because of this, reciprocal Verhältnis, which means relationship, or relation. So, what was that? Verhältnis. Derives from the word halten, which means to hold, and Verhältnis, or rather derives from the word, in this case, verhalten, which means to behave. And Verhältnis is basically how, relationship, how to, like, different sides or more behave in terms of each other, like the dynamics, of course. So, has, sich, itself, himself, themselves, like self basically, but in German it's always the same. In dem, in the 19th, keep in mind in German you always pronounce the lowest, like the one, cipher, number, cipher, I don't know, but the like single number as the first one, and I don't necessarily know the pattern, algorithm of the way you say that normally, or right, or whichever way you want to say that, but I think it's always, no matter what the cipher number, has to be said first. 19, 9, except for when it's above 100, like then you say 109, but then you still say 119, so 119. But yeah, it's the same as in English in this case, but you don't, well, I don't know, maybe it's in English. Yeah, the difference in English is that you say 23, for example, but in German you say 23, so you say 3 and 20, but in English you say 23, so that is basically the difference. So under 20 I think it's basically the same, but when it gets above 20 and up to 100, it appears to be not the same, and in German they're the single lowest, I don't know, number like prevails or something, I don't know. So through this reciprocal relationship or something has itself in the 19th Jahrhundert, which is very word by word. Jahr means year and 100 means 100, so 100 year instead of century, which is more, I think, Latin or something. So it has itself in the 19th century, das the US-American Brauchtum, which is kind of, which way did you say that? It's derived from the word brauchen, but not really. I think we had that in the previous episode or something. Need, of course need, but Brauchtum, which is kind of more ritual customs, apparently. So the US-American customs den, around the, could also be like to get to something, to make it to something, but in this case it means around den, the Weihnachtsmann, like Santa Claus, so Santa Claus, entwickelt. We had that in which episode did we have that? I think the last Bundesländer series, where I kind of very thoroughly explained explained at least my thought process around that, why this means develops, but, or in this case has developed, but this just means, has developed. So through this reciprocal relationship has itself in the 19th century, or year 100, but century essentially, the US-American customs, or custom, I don't know, around the Santa Claus, kind of the same, entwickelt, developed, die, which, or that, heute, today, weltweit, worldwide, dominierende, dominating, merkantil, I don't know what that means. This appears to be some Wirtschaftspolitik, which means economical politics. Next to the Waren. Which means to kind of export the most but import the least. Basically, I think kind of, for example, you could say like, the best example that I think, but I'm not sure if it's correct, is for example China, because they export like a whole lot of goods, but import, I don't know how much they import, maybe like in terms of steel and something, but I don't know. Just for a real life example, oh my god, I can't talk today. So mercantilismus appears to be some very, I don't know, patriotic, economical politic, some kind of thing. I have no idea about this. And so the today worldwide dominating merkantil bestimmte Rezeption des heiligen Nikolaus. So export the most, import the least, bestimmen, derives from the word stimmen, which can have many different meanings, like, for example, when you, when you make sure that your instrument is correctly sounding, or when you vote, or when something is right. This all derives from the word stimmen, which basically, as a plural of the word Stimme, with a capital S because it's a noun, which means my voice, or my voice as a voter, basically, my vote. It means that. Stimmen, in this case, means, of course, voices, then, in this case. Where was I? Stimmen. Bestimmte here. It means merkantil bestimmte. In this case, it means to be, what's it called? Bestimmt. This can have different meanings. This can either mean to be led, basically, by something, or it can mean certainly. But in this case, it means to be defined, basically, or led. Rezeption, I think this can also mean like at a hotel, the reception, but in this case it means the reception and like perception, I think, rather, des heiligen Nikolaus, of the holy Nikolaus. So through this reciprocal relationship has itself in the 19th century, the US American customs, or themselves, the customs around the Santa Claus developed, thus today worldwide dominating mercantilic or something, what's it called? Bestimmt. Led, you could say, perception or reception, I don't know, of the holy Nikolaus. So through this reciprocative, what was it again? Reciprocative or reciprocate? Reciprocal, yeah, reciprocal relationship. The US American customs have developed into has itself the US American customs started developing around the Santa Claus in the 19th century. The today worldwide dominating mercantilic, you could also say in this case, by the way, dominated reception of the holy Nikolaus. In Verbindung mit winterlichem Brauchtum aus verschiedenen Kulturkreisen entwickelte sich zudem die synkretistische säkulare Symbolform des Weihnachtsmannes. By the way, one thing you also have to know that I might also not understand every single word that is written here. For example, like synkretistische, säkulare. I have no idea what these two words mean, but I guess we're either going to find out or just leave it at that. But yeah, let's just start with a sentence. In Verbindung. In Verbindung, in connection. Verbindung derives from the word verbinden, which means to connect, or combine also. And this derives from the word binden, which basically means to tie. Yeah, tie, bind, the same. And verbinden, this is what I was referring to earlier, where I said it kind of makes it messy. Like verbinden is to basically make something, to, in this case, from binden, something so, to bind something so much that is basically, connected, like, not forever, but I guess you know what I mean. So, in connection, with winterlichem, this derives from the word winter, which of course means winter. And winterlich means winterly, basically. Brauchtum, what was it, customs, in connection with winterly or winter-like customs. Aus, from, this could also mean that something is out, but in this case it means from. Verschiedenen, different. Kulturkreisen, culture, Kreise, circles. This derives from the word Kreis, which of course means circle. Entwickelte sich, developed itself. Here you also have the reflexive sich entwickeln, which we had. How is it? Hat sich entwickelt. Has itself developed itself. Zudem, which you could see it as like word by word. It would mean zu, which means to or closed. Dem, which is the dative form of das, so whom. So to whom, which basically kind of explains the meaning, but it just means also. So entwickelte sich zudem, also developed itself in this case in German, but in English you don't say it developed itself. The syncretistic, I'm just gonna look that up. I have no idea what that means. Synkretismus, Synthese von Ideen oder Philosophien zu einem neuen System oder Weltbild. Okay. So this apparently means, I read this, beschreibt eine Eigenschaft oder einen Vorgang, okay, bei dem verschiedene religiöse, philosophische, kulturelle oder sprachliche Elemente zu einem neuen einheitlichen System verschmelzen oder sich vermischen. So kind of it refers to the word of synthesis or something, which just means that different aspects or different, I don't know, entire sections or whatever of like primarily religions or something, like, what's it called? Verschmelzen in German. This means like mold or merge together. Or melt together rather, but in this case merge. So that they, become one again. So entwickelte sich die synkretistische säkulare Symbolfigur des Weihnachtsmannes, so the many worldviews added together, säkular, what does that mean? Loslösung von religiösen Normen, Rückgang von religiösen Überzeugungen sowie damit verbunden die Zuordnung von Religion zur privaten und nicht mehr zur öffentlichen Sphäre. I'm just gonna Google that too, that's kind of complicated to understand. So historically it means the kind of claiming of, what's it called, Eigentum, property, like owner, estate, not necessarily estate, this is more like real estate like, but like the owning of things of the government historically, but this just means I don't necessarily know what this means in practice, but Trennung, which means separation of religion and state, the Rückgang, what does that mean? The decline, of religious practice and meaning, as well as the Verlagerung, I don't know, this is also very figurative. Relocation, this makes sense, not necessarily too figurative, but religiöser Fragen, of religious questions in the private area. So this is basically what happens in the like last 100 years or something, or 150, I don't know, because like a lot of time ago people used to be more religious, I guess, and nowadays it's not that much so more anymore. So Säkularisierung, this just means that it became, I think, less religious and more governmental, like reality based or something. I don't have a clue, but so in connection, Symbolfigur, we were here. Symbolfigur, symbol, figure, you can guess that probably, des Weihnachtsmannes, of the Santa Claus. Because in German it's always der Weihnachtsmann, in English it's of course Santa Claus, so it's just a name. In German it's like der Baum, the tree, but just der Weihnachtsmann. So in connection with wintry, interesting, with wintry customs from different cultures probably just, or cultural circles, yeah. The developed itself, also the syncretistic secular symbol figure of the Santa Claus, so in connection with wintry customs from different culture circles, the syncretistic secular symbol figure of the Santa Claus developed. Or started developing, I don't know. Schiffchen setzen. Schiffchen setzen nennt man den seit dem 15. Jahrhundert bekannten Brauch, aus Papier oder anderem Material Nikolausschiffe zu basteln, in die der Heilige seine Gaben legen soll. Schiffchen setzen, this derives from the word Schiff, and Schiffchen is the kind of cuter form of that, and Schiff means boat, or no, ship rather. Schiff means ship. Setzen derives from the word, it's setzen basically, so means to put. It's very similar to other words, like in German, or in general, we always have this stellen, legen, setzen. Place like set, but it's also in English like put. So it's kind of the same, but not the same. Stellen is more like vertically, legen is more like when I lie myself on bed, like lying, and setzen is more when I sit on a chair, so it's not the same all, but you can translate it basically in English to the same. So to put, basically. Schiffchen setzen, so put little ship or something, or ships. Nennt, calls, derived of course from the word nennen, which means to name or to call. Nennt man, which is the non-personal form, where you say the general person, basically. Nennt man, one calls. Basically it's the same as in English when you say one, so calls one. Den, the, seit, since, dem, the 15th Jahrhundert, century, bekannten, known, Brauch, which means, this is also from Brauchtum, basically the same, but just Brauch. The practice rather, or custom. Aus Papier oder anderem Material Nikolausschiffe zu basteln. In this case out of Papier, paper, oder anderem, other, different in this case, material, Nikolausschiffe. So Nikolaus ships, zu basteln, to, what's it called? Basteln. To craft. So out of paper or different material, Nikolaus ships to craft, in die der Heilige seine Gaben legen soll, in that, plural, der Heilige, the Holy One basically, seine, his, Gaben, gifts, legen, lay, soll, should. So, Schiffchen setzen nennt man seit dem 15. Jahrhundert, nennt man den seit dem 15. Jahrhundert bekannten Brauch, aus Papier oder anderem Material Nikolausschiffe zu basteln, in die der Heilige seine Gaben legen soll. So, Schiffchen, what's it called? Yeah, Schiffchen setzen, basically you can also say that in English because it's an own word, but ships, I don't know, Schiffchen setzen, ship, setting, yeah, I don't know, setting up boats, whichever way you want to call that. Calls one since the since the 15th century known custom or customs out of paper or other material Nikolaus ships. Wait, am I stupid or is there no plural ship? The ships, yeah, I was correct. I was kind of confused. Ship out of or different material Nikolaus ships to craft in that, or in those, I don't know, in that in this case, the Holy One, you could just say the Holy, I don't know, the Holy One, his gifts lay shit, so Schiffchen setzen or setting up these small little boats is a custom, or are customs that are known since or have been known since the 15th century, with which people have, out of paper and other material, crafted Nikolaus ships in which the Nikolaus basically should lay his gifts. Hintergrund für diesen Brauch dürfte das Schifferpatronat sein. Hintergrund derives from the word hinten, which means like behind, basically the behind, but in this case this is an adjective, so rare, or yeah, behind. So Hintergrund is basically like the kind of, in Germany we say Steigerungsform. Comparative form, of course. So the like even more in the back, basically. So hinter, or you could also say behind something, and Hintergrund. Grund means, I don't know, ground basically, or like the floor. And Hintergrund, just to translate that in general, means background. So background for this Brauch. Let me just translate that. I want to know if custom is the same plural, or stays plural and doesn't. This custom, so it has a singular form. So background to this custom, dürfte basically means allowed to, or could be allowed to, because it's kind of conjunctive or something. Das, the Schifferpatronat, which I guess is some like old, what's it called, unity or something, like Vereinigung of association of ship owners, I don't know. This is only ever being mentioned in terms of, I think, Nikolaus or something. Schifferpatronat. Google doesn't really find anything. Interesting. Anyways, I don't know what that is, so yeah. So I guess this is a very old association of ships or ship owners. So background for this custom, dürfte das Schifferpatronat sein, basically is allowed to be, or could be allowed to be, the ship, I guess, ownership association or something. But in this case, in English you would say background for this custom is probably the ship owner association or something, whatever this means. Auch heute noch befindet sich auf vielen Handelsschiffen ein Bildnis des heiligen Nikolaus. Also, heute, today, noch, still, befindet, which means is there. Befindet, this derives from the word finden, which means to find, and befinden is mean just to be located or something. Yeah, locate, discover, encounter, meet with. Anyways, auch heute noch befindet, still, today, is located. Sich, befindet sich, this is reflexive, sich befinden. Auf, on, vielen, many, Handelsschiffen derives from the word Handel, which means trade, and Schiffe, of course, ships. Auf Handelsschiffen, auf wem, dative case. Auf vielen Handelsschiffen, on many, what was it again? Trading ships or something. Ein Bildnis, Bildnis is kind of a more older version of basically saying sculpture or some crafted form of someone or something. So it can be a sculpture, it can be a picture, but mostly it's meant to be some sort of a sculpture. So Bildnis. This, of course, derives from the word Bild, by the way, which means picture. And Bildnis is kind of... Which way do you say this? This is kind of like what I was explaining in some other episodes where I said like ship, craftsmanship in English, like friendship, or like it's the same in English like wilderness, which in German is, by the way, Wildnis, which is kind of funny because it's almost the same as Bildnis, but this just means like something, you know. Des Heiligen Nikolaus, of the Holy Nikolaus. So, auch noch heute befindet sich auf vielen Handelsschiffen ein Bildnis des Heiligen Nikolaus. Also, today still is located or is being located itself on many trade ships, a statue or something. Oh yeah, let me translate that. Maybe there is a better translation. Portrait, yeah. I don't know. A pictured, whatever, I don't know. Let's just say statue of the Holy Nikolaus. But this is, I think, why this is also said in this way here is because it can, on many ships or trade ships, apparently it can either be a like real picture or a statue or sculpture or whatever. So, still today there are on many trading ships or whatever. I mean, just Handelsschiff, maybe there is a better word to translate that. Merchant ships, interesting. Merchant ships, there are still like sculptures of the Holy Nikolaus or pictures. Das Nikolausschiffchen wurde später durch Stiefel, Schuh oder Strumpf abgelöst, zu denen später noch der Gabentaler kam. Das Nikolausschiffchen, the Nikolaus ship, or small ship, because this is the cuter form of that, wurde, this also indicates that is the past passive again, wurde abgelöst, and it's the same as here, was being replaced by, basically. So, the Nikolausschiffchen was being, später, it's also derived from the word spät, which means late, später means later, durch, through, or by, in this case, Stiefel, which means, what does it mean? Yeah, boot, basically, I think, Stiefel. Yeah, or boots, der Stiefel. This is, I think, the singular version, because this is also singular. Through boot, shoe is the same as shoe, or Strumpf, which means sock, abgelöst, so it was being replaced by Stiefel, so boot, shoe or sock, zu denen später noch der Gabentaler kam. Zu denen, to whom or them, später, later, noch, still, or yeah, they, I don't know, is there another word to which even, I don't know, still, noch der Gabentaler kam, still, the Gabentaler, gifts, plate, basically, Gaben, we had that earlier, this means gifts, Teller means plate, so gift plate, came, so, das Nikolausschiffchen, the Nikolaus ship, was being later through boot, shoe or sock replaced, to which later even or still the gift plate came. So the Nikolaus ship was being replaced by boot, shoe or sock, to which later came the gifts plate. Im Salzburger Land gab es dafür den Nikolausgarten. In the Salzburger, which is a city, Salzburg, let me just show you. Salzburg. Salzburg. In, was it Austria? No, Switzerland? Austria. Österreichisch. Keep in mind, in German it's always with an Ö, and most other languages with an A and U, so O. But in German, it's, because Austrian is also German, Austrian German, it's always with an Ö. So don't be confused by that. I was confused when I first heard Austria with an AU. So, Salzburger Land. Where were we? Yeah, Salzburger Land. So, wait, is Salzburg, this is just a city, right? Salzburg. By the way, they also have a, I think, in Austria, pretty famous football or soccer club. Salzburger Land. I mean, just, is there also Stadt? Stadt means city. So Gemeinde, so a municipality or something. Salzburger Land. Let me just see. Where's that? No, it's actually, yeah, I was correct. It is a federal state, basically, of the Republic of Austria. I didn't actually have any idea of their federal states, about their federal states. I hardly have any about Germany's, but now after doing this series, I of course have more. I mean, yeah, of course I did have some, but like not really that much, as most Germans do. But of Austria, I don't freaking know. I thought they had like, what's it called? Yeah, this is Switzerland, Cantone or something. It's called cantons of Switzerland, like valleys, and this is for Switzerland. But here I don't have any idea. So this is apparently a federal state. And so in the federal state of Salzburg gab es, this is what I was saying in lots of earlier episodes, gibt es, or geben es, or es gibt, is there is, und dann, no, there is, of course I was incorrect. This is, I actually remembered it incorrectly, because it's not es geben, this is incorrect, and in English you say that. I was kind of confusing it. So it is es gibt, and you say that for basically everything. Es gibt eins, es gibt zwei, es gibt drei. Es gibt drei Hosen, es gibt eine Hose, which is trousers. So it doesn't make any difference. In English, this is the way. Es gibt und es geben, but es geben in German is not possible. So there is and there are. And basically, this is also what you have to keep in mind, or what I didn't kind of keep in mind. This is kind of sometimes why I was wondering why the thing that comes up next is in the accusative case, because the es in es gibt is already the subjective. So when you say basically there is, or what is saying word by word, it gives, it is already the subjective. So es gibt Bücher is it gives books. Of course the books is the accusative and not the subjective, but this is something at least I have to keep in mind sometimes, because then I'm saying, yeah, this is of course the subjective, but of course it's not. So, where were we? Yeah, gab is, so this gab is the, what's it called? In German it's called Präteritum. So, past tense, first past tense, preterit, I don't know, preterit. I don't know way you say that in English, but basically the first past tense for German. So gab es, there was, dafür, therefore, basically, which is not the same in English, but basically it translates to therefore, for this. In English it has a different meaning than really therefore. I mean, slightly different meaning. But in the Salzburger Land, were or gave it therefore the Nikolaus garden, which appears to be part of a custom of Christmas or something, I don't know, where they apparently, if I'm assuming correctly, put their socks or something, or the shoes or boots or whatever. So in the Salzburger Land, there was for that the Nikolausgarten. Kinder stellen am Vorabend des Nikolaustages Schuhe, Stiefel oder Teller vor die Tür oder hängen Strümpfe vor den Kamin, damit der Heilige sie auf seinem Weg durch die Nacht mit Nüssen, Mandarinen, Schokolade, Lebkuchen und so weiter füllen kann. So, Kinder, which means children, stellen, sie stellen. I don't know if it's always, but in most cases, this is, by the way, the what's it called? Infinitive form. If you have the they form, the sie, die Kinder, sie stellen. This is, I think, I don't know if in every, but like most cases, it's the infinitive form. So stellen and sie stellen. It's mostly the same. Or always, I don't know. I might have to look that up. Am Vorabend, at the, vor means pre or before basically. Abend means evening. Des of the Nikolaustages, Nikolaus Day. So I don't know if we're talking about the 24th, 25th here or about the 6th, but probably depending on the time they did that. When this was, I don't know, maybe like in the year 800, they probably still did it with the 6th, and after, I don't know, the 15th century or something, or 17th, they probably did it on the 24th or something. Probably, I assume. And so Nikolaus sagt Schuhe, which again is shoes, Stiefel, boots oder Teller or plates vor die Tür, in front of the door. Oder, or, hängen. Here again, this is the infinitive form. Or hang, Strümpfe, which is stockings or socks, this way. Vor den Kamin, in front of the chimney. Damit, so that, basically. Da, there, mit, where, not where, with, but this just means so that. Der Heilige, the Holy One, they, or them, auf, or basically this is not the, but you could also say this is the personal pronoun, but this is of course in terms of the things, but you in this case also say sie. But when you think of personal pronouns, it's of course referring to, at first, of two people, but I was kind of, it doesn't matter basically. If it's people or what's it called, things. So that the Holy One, they, on, or them, on his way, auf seinem Weg, durch die Nacht, through the night, mit, with, Nüssen, nuts, Mandarinen, which is, I think, also mandarin in English. Always having a spelling mistake here. Mandarins, yeah. Schokolade, which is chocolate. Lebkuchen. I don't actually know what that means in English. This is the typical Christmas gingerbread, yeah. Interesting, it's called gingerbread, so in German Ingwerbrot. But of course today, or nowadays, it has nothing to do with ginger anymore, or with being healthy, basically. USW, which means und so weiter. I explained that in some previous episodes. Und so weiter. Where I also talked about some other what's it called? Abbreviations. Important, but this is also very important that you need to keep in mind. Füllen, fill, kann, so. Kinder stellen am Vorabend des Nikolaustages Schuhe, Stiefel oder Teller vor die Tür oder hängen Strümpfe vor den Kamin, damit der Heilige sie auf seinem Weg durch die Nacht mit Nüssen, Mandarinen, Schokolade, Lebkuchen und so weiter füllen kann. Children put at the previous evening of the Nikolaus Day shoes, boots or plates in front of the door, or hang stockings in front of the chimney, so that the Holy One, they, or them in this case, on his way through the night with nuts, mandarins, chocolate, gingerbread, and so on. Fill can. So children put at the previous evening or night of the Nikolaus Day shoes, boots, or plates in front of their door, or hang stockings in front of the chimney so that the Holy One can fill them on his way through the night with nuts, mandarins, I don't know, chocolates and gingerbread and things like these. Außerdem gibt es morgens oft ein aus Hefeteig gebackenes Gebetbrot. We had that in some other episode where I was kind of had no idea what that meant, but apparently it is referring to, which I was also thinking about, or like, which I also assumed apparently correctly, that is referring to the Weihnachtsmann, for example, which basically is just like, what was it called, pastries or something, like baked things in the form or in the shape of people, like for example at St. Martin, which is also quite kind of popular day in Germany. It was correct. Beckmann. Stutenkerl. I have no idea this is called this way, but I only have heard it as Weihnachtsmann. Appears to be a Gebetbrot, but I thought this was a like collective noun, including multiple things, I don't know. But anyways, this is very popular at the St. Martin's Day, or St. Martin, which is some heroic story. I don't know if it's religiously related, but something where this man helped, I think, little children or helped the poor, and he like kind of heroically shed his, umhang? Like, not shed, what's it called? Parted it to give it to a poor man, and he hid in a, Hühnerstall, a chicken coop, and I don't know if this is even any true, but it is always on the, I think, 11th of 11th, which is also, I think, the start of Carnival. I don't know, even though it's called Carnival in English, Karneval, which is very popular, of course, in Germany. I don't know if it's also in Europe, but in general, where they just, in Germany you say, sie saufen sich die Hucke voll, which is maybe not so such a good expression, but saufen, of course. But this just means they get completely drunk. And so Kinderstellen, we were there. Außerdem gibt es morgens oft ein aus Hefeteig gebackenes Gebetbrot. So, außerdem, except for that. Außer means outside or something. Yeah, just outside. Dem, this, so outside this basically. Gibt es, gives it, there is. Morgens, in the morning. Often, ein, a, aus, out of in this case. Can also mean out, but in this case out of. Hefeteig, which means, what's it called? I don't remember. Yeast dough, gebackenes, baked, but neutral form, because it's das Brot, das gebackene Brot. And in the non-specific noun form, it's gebackenes Brot. So without the article, or ein gebackenes Brot, like with the non-specific article. So a out of yeast dough, baked, Gebetbrot. This means basically some bread in the shape of human. So except for that, there is in the morning often a out of yeast dough baked, I don't know, picture bread or something. So except for that, in the morning there is often or in the morning the day after, there is often a baked bread out of yeast dough. So, or es gibt, in this case, es gibt is more like relating to that they are being given, so the children are being given that bread basically or something. So kind of a slightly different meaning, but yeah. Der Einlegebrauch, das Füllen der Schuhe in der Nacht vom 5. auf den 6. Dezember oder ähnliches, basiert auf der Legende von den 3 Jungfrauen, die nachts vom heiligen Nikolaus beschenkt wurden. Der Einlegebrauch, this kind of confuses me because einlegen is rather in terms of pickling pickles. Of course. Einlegen, but I don't know in which way this is meant. Einlegebrauch. Maybe laying something inside. Or like the initial custom, I guess. So I'm just gonna say the initial custom. And any other way this means pickle custom. Das Füllen, the filling der Schuhe of the shoes in der Nacht, in the night, vom 5. of the 5th auf den 6. December on the, or onto the 6th December, this is just the way you say that in German, vom 5. auf den 6. from the 5th on the 6th December oder ähnliches or similar, basiert, basis basically, basiert auf der Legende on the legend von den 3 Jungfrauen of the 3, I don't know which way to do it, translate that this way. Virgins, yeah. Basically this means virgin, but in this case, yeah, this is basically just say young women, but it generally means virgin like in a sexual way, but also in the way of being like religion. We always say the Jungfrau Maria. I don't know if this is also in terms of sexual, but this is kind of more like religious, if you know what I mean. Jungfrau Maria, because she didn't get the child from Joseph or something. I don't know. I have no idea about this religious stuff, but yeah. So, die nachts vom heiligen Nikolaus beschenkt wurden. The 3 virgins, that nightly, or during the night basically, die nachts vom heiligen Nikolaus, from or by the holy Nikolaus, beschenkt wurden. Were being gifted, you could say. Let me just translate that sentence in Google. Were being gifted, I would say. Or were given gifts. So this is also... Right, this is also passive, of course. Die beschenkt wurden. A different sentence structure of passive, but this is of course the same. Wurden beschenkt, so... But because this is a subordinate clause, this is a different sentence structure. Die beschenkt wurden. So, because in general, if it was not a subordinate clause, you would say Sie wurden beschenkt. So the verb is basically at the end. Oder die Jungfrauen. Die 3 Jungfrauen. Jungfrauen. The 3 virgins received gifts, or were being gifted, you could say, kind of, but gifted means something different in English, I think. So, and the last 2 sentences and then we're through. In mittelalterlichen Klosterschulen gab es den Brauch, dass die Kinder sich am Nikolaustag einen Kinderbischof aus ihren Reihen wählen durften. In mittelalterlichen Klosterschulen, in medieval like or something, mittelalterlich, or general medieval Klosterschulen, this derives from the word middle agely. So middle age, in English you say medieval, but it just means middle age. So in medieval Klosterschulen, what does Kloster mean again? Monastery or something? Monastery schools, yeah. So in medieval monastery schools gab es den Brauch, there was the, what's it called? Custom. I always forget that word because I just learned it kind of. dass die Kinder sich am Nikolaustag einen Kinderbischof aus ihren Reihen wählen durften. That the children, dass die Kinder means children, sich, themselves, at or on the Nikolaustag, Nikolaus Day, einen, a Kinderbischof, so children bishop of course. This is kind of apparently a kind of a tradition or something, like in the medieval ages, aus ihren Reihen wählen durften, from their, what's it called, Reihen, I forgot that, rows, basically, from their rows, wählen, choose, durften, were allowed to, or could. So in medieval monastery schools, there was the custom that the children themselves, as the Nikolaus Day, a children bishop from their rows could. So in the medieval monastery schools, there was a custom that the children could elect a children bishop out of their, what's it called, circle, like out of their group. Were allowed to basically. Nach dem Prinzip der verkehrten Welt predigte er den Erwachsenen und durfte ihr Verhalten tadeln. Nach dem Prinzip, after the principle or something, let me just have a look. Principle. So, but I always say that nachdem means either after the, or in this case, according to the principle, nachdem, nach wem, this is of course genitive case, not genitive, a dative case, nachdem, nach wem, nach dem Prinzip, dative case, why do I always say genitive, I don't know, der, of the, this is genitive, der verkehrten Welt, of the, like whose, wessen, nach dem Prinzip wessen, of the verkehrten Welt, the, what's it called, wrong, yeah, you could also say wrong, but like verkehrten Welt, genitive case, upside down world, yeah, upside down world. Predigte er den Erwachsenen und durfte ihr Verhalten tadeln. World, Welt means world, of course. Predigte, preached, he, den Erwachsenen, the grown-ups, you could say. Very much word by word, this would mean grown-ups because this derives from the word wachsen, which can also have something to do with wax, but in this case it means to grow, and erwachsen means to be grown up. So Erwachsene are the grown-ups, the adults. So he preached to the adults und durfte ihr Verhalten tadeln, and was allowed to their behavior tadeln. This derives from the word tadel, which I think means kind of a reprimand, like, what's it called? Strafe is maybe, I forgot the translation, Strafe, penalty, which is more kind of a penalty, so, or punishment. So, and he could punish their, I think kind of punish, I'm not quite sure if this is completely correct, but basically, and could their behavior punish. So, after, or in this case according to, the principle of the upside down, or returned you could also say, but like upside down world, preached he, the grown-ups or the adults, and was allowed to their behavior punish. So, according to the principle of the upside down world, he preached to the adults and was allowed to punish their behavior. And for the last sentence, an einigen Orten blieb er bis zum 28. Dezember, dem Tag der unschuldigen Kinder, im Amt. An einigen Orten, at a lot of places. This is kind of funny because this, I think, derives from the word eins, or just ein, which of course means one, or a in English. But einig means a lot of. By the way, the word vereinigt, for example, means then again one, so united. Or like means united, so again one. So, an einigen Orten, at a lot of places, blieb, stayed, he, bis, until, zum, to the, zu dem, zum 28th of December, dem Tag der unschuldigen Kinder im Amt. The day, Tag der of the unschuldigen means unguilty, basically. Or, yeah, unschuldig. Or not guilty, I don't know. Innocent? Yeah, innocent. Der unschuldigen Kinder, children. Kinder means children. In the Amt. Which means, basically, it's kind of saying he stayed there for up until the 28th. So, im Amt is kind of... Yeah, or I don't know if it's meant like over the years or just meant over the Christmas days, but it just means basically that he stayed there. So, at many places he stayed up to the 28th of December, the day of the innocent children. You can read more about this if you want to. Im Amt, in the, like in office. Yeah, in English you also say in office. Yeah, and that was it for today. This was the second part, and I think maybe the last. There is more. Maybe we're gonna do about that, but I'm not quite sure. About the Campus, which is more like what's it called? Begleitung, as it's said there. Begleitung, the accompaniment of the Nikolaus or Santa Claus, which is kind of the same, with which is more famous or was more famous in Austria and maybe Switzerland, but I don't know if we're gonna get into that. But at least that was it for the second part, and see you in the next video. Bye!